Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. I hope the week's gone well. We do whiz by. It's become intolerably hot here in Nairobi. And normally that's just before the rains come, so it ratchets a few degrees higher. But when I'm looking at the weather formation in the world, I'm not so sure the rain's on its way. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's Mind Speak at the Sankara. We'll be serving tea and coffee from 9:30. We'll start from 10. We're hosting the founder of St. Paul's PLC, Richard Britton Long, and a number of key officers from the same organisation. They're looking to list here in Nairobi. They're a UK-focused property company investing primarily in UK government and quasi-government occupied properties, and they believe that they have a skill they can outperform, and that there are what I would call arbitrage opportunities, in particular if you look at 10-year gilts, which is UK government backed. You're looking at 1 or 2%, whereas here we're talking of double-digit returns. So do come and engage, and it's always a great place to network and to learn something. So we're in the Sankara, we'll be on a live feed as well, and we're all excited about this. Macro thoughts. We have heard from central banks in all corners of the globe now, and the liquidity party rolls on with the potential for more to come. So we're still in the early hours of the morning, drinking and hoping it's never going to stop. Dan Mwangi tweeted, KWS Kenya deploys team to verify and act accordingly on report of a lion spotted on Mombasa Road near City Cabanas. The lions have been escaping the confines of the national park on a regular basis these days. Once you see the boundaries of your environment, they are no longer the boundaries of your environment. Marshall McLuhan. And then I saw this tweet, J.R.R. Tolkien, the goblins make no beautiful things, but many clever ones. And then that took me to the Fellowship of the Ring. All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes a fire shall be woken. A light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken. The crownless again shall be king. A single dream is more powerful than 1,000 realities. I sit beside the fire and think of all that I have seen, of meadow flowers and butterflies, in summers that have been, of yellow leaves and gossamer in autumns that there were, with morning mist and silver sun and wind upon my hair. I sit beside the fire and think of how the world will be when winter comes without a spring that I shall ever see. For still there are so many things that I have never seen. In every wood, in every spring, there is a different green. I sit beside the fire and think of people long ago, and people that will see a world that I shall never know. But all the while I sit and think of times there were before. I listen for returning feet and voices at the door. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is greeted by supporters after his appointment as Chief of Staff to President Dilma Rousseff. At the end of a week of extraordinary political drama, constitutional chaos, massive anti-government protests, supporters of Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff and her predecessor, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, will rally in cities across the country on Friday. The Frente Brasil Popular, a network of trade unions, social movements and other organizations sympathetic to the ruling Partido dos Trabalhadores, said it would hold events in 45 cities in defense of democracy, the rights of the working class. It will mark the first major show of strength by Brazil's pro-government factions since an estimated 3 million people took to the streets on Sunday to demand the president's resignation. I think Brazil is seriously in disequilibrium now. And Pedro da Costa tweeted anti-Lula protests in Brazil. A new Chinese ship activity has been spotted at the disputed South China Sea shoal. The United States has seen Chinese activity around a reef seized by China from the Philippines nearly 4 years ago, which could be a precursor to more land reclamation in the disputed South China Sea, the US Navy Chief said on Thursday. The head of US Naval Operations, Admiral John Richardson, expressed concern that an international court ruling expected in coming weeks on a case brought by the Philippines against China over its South China Sea claims could be a trigger for Beijing to declare an exclusion zone in the busy trade route. Richardson told Reuters the US was weighing responses to such a move. He said the military had seen Chinese activity around Scarborough Shoal in the northern part of the Spratly archipelago, about 200 kilometers west of the Philippine base of Subic Bay. I think China's clearly not prepared to be boxed in. Xi Jinping is really being assertive in this regard. I think the US pivot needs to do more than bare its fangs. Take you back to an article I wrote when the pivot did bare its fangs in December 2013. North Korea has fired a ballistic missile into the sea, says Seoul. I conclude by saying here comes the THAAD, THAAD. A terrorist attack, this is a tweet I got, a terrorist attack 2 weeks before the presidential election would make Donald Trump a shoo-in, in my opinion. Last month was the hottest February in 137 years of record keeping, according to data released Thursday by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It's the 10th consecutive month to set a new record, puts 2016 on course to set a third straight annual record. It was a big month, not only the hottest February, but the most unusual warmth for any month on record. Unprecedented temperatures in the Arctic, averaging an astonishing 20 degrees Fahrenheit above normal, melted away layers of ice to record low levels. The heat helped prolong the longest planet-wide coral bleaching event. These grim milestones coincide with the biggest recorded jump in carbon dioxide, the most important greenhouse gas. To be sure, some of this is the result of a monster El Nino weather pattern lingering in the Pacific Ocean, but the broader trend is clear. We live on a planet that is warming rapidly with no end in sight. On the 23rd of November, when I touched on this global warming phenomenon, I said I cannot help feeling we are like frogs in boiling water. I was talking about the cosmic fine-tuning phenomenon, which is these 6 equations that govern the universe. Sir Martin Rees has written a book about it. It's so mathematically phenomenal. And I said, we've created massive interference in this cosmic tuning phenomenon. That took me to Olafur Eliasson, the Weather Project, which was exhibited in the Tate, something worth visiting. Charles Bilello, CMT S&P total return turns green year to date. Now 50% of global equity indices are up on the year. Emerging markets leading. Let's move on to the currency markets. When I walked in, the euro topped 113. We're now back at 112.81. Dollar index around the 94.83 level. Japanese yen 111.33. Swissy 0.9673. The pound 144.43. The Aussie 0.7626. Scottish high as 0.7681. Indian rupee 66.635. South Korean won 1162.96. And the bullishness of the markets is shown by something like the South Korean won, given the background noise we've got in the Korean Peninsula. The Rial 362.42, that should be closer to 4. Egyptian pound, they raised rates, it's at 888.40, and the rand, notwithstanding all the noise over there, is back at 1522.31 and is a sell. Dollar index has had a big climb down. I put up a 1-year chart, touched a 5-month low before edging up. I think it's sort of a buy in this sort of area. Euro dollar, let me put up a 1-year chart, 112.82. 114.50 key resistance. I don't see us getting through there. Dollar yen, let me put up a 1-year chart of that, 111.36. My target since the beginning of the year has been 105, and I think we're headed there. And look at this inverted yield curve. Japanese 10-year yields are in fact below the negative deposit rate. Gold, $1,260 trading, $1,260 trading, back above 1250. That 1250 area looks to be key to me. Holger tweeted WTI crude oil rises above $40 for the first time since December the 7th. And then we now know it's above $41. I'll put up a chart. It's at $41.33. Tremendous rally, but really, I'm in two minds, because if you look at what happened last year, we had this rally into May, which took crude oil up to about $61 or $62. Seems we've got a very similar pattern in play at the moment. Let's move on to sub-Saharan Africa, drawing a line in Libya. The West's military and political leaders are pondering a major new armed intervention as Daesh's momentum builds. Signs are emerging that another Western intervention in the Arab-African world is on the horizon. United States President Obama is telling his National Security Council to consider all options to counter Daesh. The spread into Libya of the Daesh franchise is one of several existential threats to UN-led efforts to unite the feuding Tobruk and Tripoli-based governments and other factions. Support for the new government of national accord is the only strategy which Western governments can countenance to create a viable post-Muammar al-Gaddafi state. Although the GNA's future is far from certain, Western governments need the new national administration to authorize broader military action. I conclude by saying the decapitation of the strongman without any serious idea for the day after. Take you back to a piece I wrote in 2011, Gaddafi's body in a freezer, what's the message? And I was talking about this dead Gaddafi business being a powerful message. Today, Marshall McLuhan's prediction in the Gutenberg galaxy that the new electronic interdependence recreates the world in the image of a global village has come to pass. The image of a bloodied Gaddafi, then of a dead Gaddafi in a meat locker, flashed around the world via the mobile, YouTube, Twitter. I said, who's in charge of the messaging? Through the fog of real-time and raw footage, I know it's a very powerful message. The essence of that message being, don't FUCK with us, because you will end up dead. And trophy souvenir in the fridge. Put up a photograph of Muammar Gaddafi. Brazzaville, Congo's President Denis Sassou Nguesso will seek re-election on Sunday after 32 years at the helm. Unemployment hit 34% in 2013, the last data available, and stood at 60% for 15 to 24-year-olds. The IMF fears domestic instability without progress in the battle to eliminate poverty. I don't think the street is muscular enough yet to overthrow the president. That took me back to Paul Virilio, who says the revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form not in the place of production, but in the street, where for a moment it stops being a cog in the technical machine and itself becomes a motor, a machine of attack, in other words, a producer of speed. Put up a photograph of President Denis Sassou Nguesso. Interesting piece in Foreign Policy, Africa's $700 billion problem waiting to happen. Back in 2002, Meles Zenawi, then Prime Minister of Ethiopia, drafted a foreign policy and national security white paper for his country. Before finalizing it, he confided to me a nightmare scenario not included in the published version that could upend the balance of power in the Horn of Africa region. The scenario went like this: Sudan is partitioned into a volatile south and an embittered north. The south becomes a sinkhole of instability, while the north is drawn into the Arab orbit. Meanwhile, Egypt awakens from its decades-long torpor on African issues and resumes its historical stance of attempting to undermine Ethiopia, with which it has a long-standing dispute over control of the Nile River. It does so by trying to bring Eritrea and Somalia into the sphere of influence, thereby isolating the government in Addis Ababa from its direct neighbors. Finally, Saudi Arabia begins directing its vast financial resources to support Ethiopia's rivals and sponsor Wahhabi groups that challenge the traditionally dominant Sufis in the region, generating conflict and breeding militancy within the Muslim communities. 14 years later, reality has exceeded Zenawi's nightmare scenario. Not only has every one of his fears come to pass, but Egyptian President Fattah al-Sisi and Saudi King Salman bin Saud are working hand in glove on regional security issues, notably in Yemen and Libya, which has raised the stakes of the long-running Egypt-Ethiopia rivalry. Painting a very grim picture, Zupta chamber of secrets blown open, tide turns in ANC. The conspiracy of silence in the ANC has been broken, with official confirmation from Deputy Finance Minister Jonas that he was indeed offered the position of Finance Minister by the Gupta family. The damn walls have broken. The go-between role of the president's son, Dudu Zani Zuma, in the Gupta's political maneuvers is also being exposed. Even for the ultimate Teflon man, political survival may be difficult this time around. South African all shares at 18-week highs, it's up 4.93%. The bank raised the repo rate by a quarter point to 7% after a 50 basis point hike in January, as it sees inflation averaging 6.6% this year. The bank expects economic growth of 0.8% in 2016 from a previous forecast of 0.9%. I think they're going to be at zero. The currency rallied more than 3% into its strongest in more than a week. That's when it's short covering. It's at the very top of the range. I'll put up a 6-month chart. I think it sells off again. South African potato prices have more than doubled in 2016 from a year earlier, as the worst drought in more than a century cuts yields in growing regions. Egyptian central bank raised its key interest rate by 150 basis points. The Egyptian stock market is up 6.85% this year, up 22.4% in March, and in a fully fledged bull market. Nile flood, one of the earliest images in the exhibition, is of the Giza Pyramid complex. Take a look. Nigeria's currency crisis. Can you spare a dollar? Says the economist. The mutterings of discontent are growing louder. In Nigeria's street markets, the price of a bag of rice has surged by 12.5% in the past month. Supplies of bread have dwindled after bakers turned off their ovens to protest about the rising cost of flour. The rich lament that milk is missing from supermarket shelves. The poor complain about the price of gari. A fish importer estimates that 70 million Nigerians can no longer afford his wares. Such are the symptoms of Nigeria's foreign exchange crises. Africa's most populous nation exports oil and imports nearly everything else. The policy is not working. Inflation hit 11.4%, and growth has fallen to 2.1%. Factories are closing down for lack of supplies. Without some flexibility on the currency, expect food shortages to worsen. Been saying that for a while. Nigerian all share down 10.35% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index down 3.51% this year. Fairy circles, long a mystery in Africa, now found in Australia. These fairy circles, which look nearly identical, came from Australia, not Africa. I was really astonished, Dr. Getson said. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Put up a photograph of tracks of oryx antelopes crossing fairy circles in Namibia. From the Paris Review, Malik Sidibe's iconic photos of nightlife in Bamako, Mali. I put up the first photograph. You go to someone's wedding, someone's christening, he told Let's Culture in 2008, speaking of the renown he has gained as a party photographer. I was lucky enough at that time to be the intellectual young photographer with a small camera who could move around. The early photographers like Seydou Keita worked with plate cameras and were not able to get out and use a flash. So I was much in demand by the local youth, everywhere in town, everywhere whenever there was a dance I was invited. At night from midnight to 4 a.m. or 6 a.m. I went from one party to another. I could go to 4 different parties. If there were only 2, it was like having a rest. But if there were 4, you couldn't miss any. If you were given 4 invitations, you had to go. You couldn't miss them. I'd leave one place, I'd take 36 shots here, 36 shots there, and then 36 somewhere else until the morning. And then I like this photograph where Luiz de Dos, June 2003, 2004, vintage gelatin silver print, glass pane, cardboard tape and string. Destitute Zambian mine workers dream of copper market rebound. It's rebounded actually a little bit. Across Africa, commodity price downturn spurred by slumping demand from China has slammed economies from Nigeria to South Africa. Zambia, which relies on copper for more than 70% of its export earnings, has been particularly hard hit. More than 10,000 workers have lost their jobs since late last year as plunging prices for the metal left mines unprofitable and power shortages hobbled production. The economy grew last year at the slowest pace since 1998, and the kwacha has slumped 44% against the dollar since the start of 2015, more than any other African currency. 2 people from the same family have died from Ebola in Guinea, the government has said, in the first re-emergence of the virus in the country since an outbreak was declared over in December 2015. October 2014, I wrote about Ebola, and I said the severity lies in the speed of infections. And I used a quote from Paul Virilio again: the effectiveness of electronic money lies in its mass, which increases its velocity of circulation. He says that the last post-industrial resource acceleration exceeds accumulation. The escape velocity becomes the equivalent of profit. So my first point about the Ebola virus is that it is not about the absolute number of cases, it is about its escape velocity. And viruses exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics. Coming here to Kenya, Kenon Kobil reported a surge of full-year profit after tax. It surged 84.642%. Sales were down 4.048%, which is impressive when you consider the trajectory of the oil price. Other income up 65% at 1.41 billion. Finance costs down 46.294%. Profit before tax up 68.647%. Profit after tax up 84.642%. They're paying a final dividend of 25 cents at that 10 cents interim dividend. Cash and cash equivalents at the end of the year, 0.76 billion. Record net profit of 2 billion shillings. Strategy to turn around the business by reducing debt, simplifying the business and engaging in value-adding activities such as closing protracted lawsuits, selling underperforming assets, and exiting operations in difficult, unprofitable countries. Sales volume up 13%, 6.7% gross margin versus 5.7% in the previous year. Debt level reduced from 10.4 billion in 2014 to 4.6 billion at the end of 2015. Involved improved gearing ratio of 31%, forex losses contained at 232 million, divested Kobil Tanzania and inactive depot asset in the Congo. Strong earnings, probably more to go, given how last year witnessed an exponential drop in the price of fuel. When you get a bit of stability or rising price, that means the inventory they're holding is also profitable. Pan-African Insurance Company reported that the full year profit after tax collapsed to 95.68%. Fair value losses, 637 million, versus fair value gains the previous year, 648 million. Profit before tax slumped 95.287%. EPS turned negative, 0.43. No dividend, 95% decline in profit, full year profit before tax. They said the asset management and property businesses exceeded 2014 operating profit levels, while the life insurance and loans business performance declined. Newly acquired general insurance business also underperformed. Life insurance business was negatively impacted by challenges experienced with our distribution network. Fair value losses will be a common theme across this sector, in my view. Africa's ports, the bottleneck, this is The Economist. I'll just read you what they wrote about Mombasa. At the entrance to the port of Mombasa, just in front of us, where machine gun toting policemen check visitors' permits, is a shipping container mounted on a plinth. It was erected last year to commemorate the port processing 1 million containers, or TEUs, 20-foot equivalent units, on the industry standard in a year for the first time. It is a boast of how much the port has improved in recent years. At the other end of the bay, a brand new container terminal juts out into the water, a smooth new road leading from it. On a hillside nearby, Chinese workers in straw hats look over the valley, where a new railway is being built from the port to Nairobi. All this gives a solid sense of progress, yet behind the scenes, not everything is going well in Mombasa. Though the builder Toyo, a Japanese company, has handed over the new terminal to the government, a tender has not yet been agreed to run it. Instead, the port's management is in chaos. Last month, the head of the Kenya Ports Authority was sacked along with 6 other senior officials. Corruption has soared of late, grumble Kenyan businessmen. The port of Mombasa is completely rotten, says one chief executive. Luiz is saying this is a big problem across the continent and impacting trade in a big way. I'll put up a photograph of Mombasa seen from the English Point Marina. The Kenya shilling was last at 101.45. That's a 6-month high. Nairobi All Share eking out a 2016 gain of 0.01%. NSE 20 down 2.8%. And finally, I'll leave you with the Kenyan hero, the secrets of the Dedan Kimathi files. Once again, I thank you for stopping by. I'm sorry for the verbosity of today's podcast. If you can make it tomorrow, do come along to Mind Speak. It's always a great session, and we'll get a lot of insights into the UK property market. That, after all, is the #1 destination of 7 billion people all over the world, so worth coming to hear about. Once again, thank you for stopping.